Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Analysing Anfield, your tactics and analytics podcast, courtesy of the Blood Red channel. I'm Josh Williams, and as ever, I'm joined by my co-host, David Hughes. Dave, how are you getting on?
Not too bad, thanks, mate. Probably better than yourself and many others tuning in today.
Yeah, definitely. It's been an up and down week. Obviously, Liverpool faced Arsenal since we last recorded. We also faced Real Madrid. We're going to have to address both of those. And in the same podcast, we're going to have to preview the second leg of Real Madrid because next week we will be recording on the Thursday, I think it is, Dave. Got a few days off, haven't you?
Yeah, just getting them in, mate, getting them in while I can. So, yeah, unfortunately, I've had to put the podcast back. I do apologise, everyone. Make it worth the wait.
Yeah, so fair to talk about Real Madrid in the middle, and then we're going to look ahead to Aston Villa this weekend. So, first things first, we'll go in chronological order. So, we'll talk about Arsenal first. Obviously, even though I feel like talking about Real Madrid, to be honest, I might just talk about Real Madrid, seeing as there's no agenda. What do you think, Dave?
It's up to you, mate. You can briefly touch on Arsenal now if you want us to, and then we'll go straight on to Madrid. The problem is, isn't it, with that Madrid game, it's kind of sucked out the feel-good factor from the Arsenal one, I think. Because everything felt pretty rosy, didn't it, after Arsenal?
Yeah. We'll talk about Arsenal first, but I think one of the reasons Madrid's in my head is because we are recording on the Wednesday morning. Well, just in the afternoon now, but it's still very fresh. It's last night, so that's why it's on my mind. But we'll talk about Arsenal first anyway. Impressed?
Yeah, I was. We said it could have been a bit of a tough game on paper. Although, Arsenal looked like where they are on the table, a team who were kind of somewhere between 7th and 9th, in terms of table positioning and most underlying metrics. Still looked like it could be a tough game, especially because they played really well for an hour a couple of weeks before, with the likes of Odegaard doing really well. And I have to say, from the outset, I thought Liverpool in this game were really strong. Definitely the better side. But it was just about getting that goal, wasn't it? And you almost knew, didn't you, that maybe when Jota was going to come on, that's when the goal would probably come, and sure enough, it did, due to the form he's been in when he's been getting to get himself on the pitch. So, yeah, on the whole, I thought it was a more than deserving victory, and I have to say, I thought Arsenal really bad on the day, but I think you tie in a lot of that with how well Liverpool performed.
Yeah, I thought Liverpool were brilliant. I thought Liverpool were, for large periods, actually, I thought it was very similar to just what we've seen this season, because obviously it took about an hour for Liverpool to actually find a net. So it was very much a case of what's came before, in terms of just Liverpool dominating all the play, seeing all of the ball, creating a fair few chances and stuff, but just struggling to put the ball in the back of the net, weirdly. But the reason I was happier than normal is because I thought Arsenal would cause us a few issues. I thought they'd get us on a break a bit more than he did. And I thought that Liverpool would maybe struggle to break through them as often. But even though it felt like a great performance, I think what kind of made the performance great, as opposed to just another one where it was good but Liverpool didn't get a win, was Jota, to be honest. I don't know if you want to check now, Dave, while I'm speaking, but have a quick look at Understat and have a look at the race map, because it's quite amazing how, despite Liverpool dominating the game, Liverpool weren't dominating the chances at all up until the hour mark. And literally on the hour mark, Liverpool's shot count starts to take a real boost in terms of the quality of the shots, the frequency of the shots, and it literally stemmed with a switch to 4-2-3-1.
Yeah, I'm just having a look now, and yeah, you're spot on. It's kind of like, although Liverpool seem to feel really comfortable in the game. I think that's a fair assessment, actually. Liverpool seemed really comfortable, but yeah, a large portion of the shots and that kind of what turned out to be a high XG on the day is generated, on the hour mark onwards, which is quite telling, really.
Yeah, I mean, it sums up really why Liverpool have been. It sums up what the perks of maybe being a bit unpredictable, I think, because of late when Liverpool have switched to some sort of front four, it's worked quite well. Like obviously against Madrid late in the game, Liverpool went to 4-2-3-1, I think, and okay, Madrid had a lead that they wanted to sit on by that stage, but Liverpool just generally looked a bit more dangerous. And obviously the Arsenal game, it just resulted in 3 goals being bagged, Arsenal kind of collapsing a little bit. And I think it remains to be seen how Klopp will kind of build the whole Liverpool 2.0 under him that we've referenced a few times. But it does feel like, despite being so loyal to 4-3-3 over the years, it feels like 4-2-3-1 is an option for him. And,
Yeah.
you know, it was kind of his go-to formation at Dortmund before he came to Liverpool. It was what he initially used when he first came to Liverpool as well. I think it was crucially probably the signing of Salah that kind of pushed him permanently away from 4-2-3-1, because as opposed to getting in like a number 10 type, like Alex Teixeira or a Julian Brandt or whatever Liverpool were linked with at the time, we went and signed a left-footed inside forward, and it kind of pushed Klopp towards 4-3-3. But I'm just wondering, you know, at the end of the season, or maybe even for the rest of this season, providing we can keep certain players fit, 4-2-3-1 we could see a little bit more often.
Yeah, I mean, even the 4-3-3 looks slightly adjusted. Well, it has done at various stages in this season in terms of it almost resembling something like a 4-2-3-1 in possession. If you think about it, you'd have like it happened, can't recall the game, but where Thiago was almost playing a little bit higher up the pitch in like that number 10 role, and I think there was Milner and someone else, maybe Wijnaldum, on the day who were in the midfield with him, and they were dropping into like a holding 2. And if you think about it, that's pretty much a 4-2-3-1, isn't it? So it does feel like even the 4-3-3 is being kind of adapting towards that shape. So I do expect to see something along those lines, specifically with the players that have been coming in over the next 12 months.
One of the reasons I think there's been less of an option for Klopp is because for it to work, you need at a bare minimum 4 good attackers to be available and able to play. Ideally 5, really, if you're going to substitute one. And Klopp's not really had that. You know, he's always got Firmino, Salah, and Mane at his disposal. But Josh has been obviously injured for a period. Shaqiri's been in and out for quite a while. And behind those, you've got Minamino and Origi. So, in terms of Klopp having enough forwards for a 4-2-3-1 shape to be worth doing, I'm not sure he has, but you know, if Liverpool in the summer can get rid of Origi and a bit more deadwood and get in another Jota type player while keeping the current front 3, he'll then have 5 quality attackers vying for possibly 3 positions, which is why I think 4-2-3-1 might come into it a little bit more in terms of his thinking. You know, if he was to sign a player like, I don't know, maybe Rafinha or somebody like that, I think it would be different. You know, on a normal day, if Klopp opts for 4-3-3, he could realistically be playing with 2 top quality forwards on the bench from the start, and I'm not sure that will be such a sensible move in the future, depending on who Liverpool sign. But in terms of the game, I thought Liverpool's counter-pressing game in particular was flawless, and I actually had a look at the numbers before, and I looked at penalty box touches. So Arsenal accumulated a total in the game of 5 touches in the penalty box. That is their lowest this season by a mile. Well, by about, put it this way, it's the only time this season they've posted single figures in the touches in the opposition box department. Last season, they didn't post anything below 5. Season before, didn't post anything below 5. Season before, didn't post anything below 5. So, and that's the earliest Stats Bombs numbers on FBref Go. So, dating back to at the very least 2017, this game was the fewest touches that Arsenal have posted in the box in a Premier League game, which I think kind of captures Liverpool's ability to just dominate the game, Dave, really.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it does. Obviously, it's highlighting that they had major issues getting into the attacking third, into the penalty area, which is obviously the danger zone from a Liverpool point of view. Couldn't get there. I thought, in previous meetings, because obviously the two played each other a lot recently, it felt like Arsenal have enjoyed. How can I put this? They've done well to beat Liverpool's press, and they found holes in it. They've been quite composed in possession to build through the thirds. When they do have those moments in possession, and you did just touch on it. This time, the press almost smothered them. They struggled. They couldn't progress in the same way. Seen a lot of the kind of things that we saw from teams, particularly last season, where the ball was, just trying that longer out ball to try and create something to get up the pitch, and it was being swallowed fairly easy, and another wave of Liverpool attack would come. So that's why, even though the timing chart doesn't quite capture Liverpool's dominance in terms of chances created for that first hour, it felt very comfortable, and it did always feel to me like we just needed to see a clinical forward come on the pitch for the goal to arrive. And obviously Jota comes on and he's just running really hot at the moment. He gets the goal, and he gets two, doesn't he, in the end, and that's kind of it. It ends up being a really comfortable win.
Yeah, obviously Trent got the assist, and I thought Trent played really well on the day. There was plenty of talk around the whole England call and stuff like that. We don't really talk about England much on this pod, to be honest. I don't think we've actually addressed Trent not getting called up. But in terms of his response, if you like, not that he needs to give one, in my opinion, but I thought he played really well. He was back to his usual self. And in terms of the numbers for the game, Liverpool took a total of 16 shots. Arsenal took 3. 7 of Liverpool's hit the target. 2 of Arsenal's hit the target. And Liverpool saw 64% of the ball, which again, just quite a surprise going into the game, because I do think Arsenal have improved a little bit under Arteta. Obviously, they had players out injured and stuff, but I think it was kind of a merge for me of being surprised at how flawless Liverpool were, while also being almost disappointed with the performance showcased by Arsenal.
Yeah, I did allude to it though on last week's show, that I had a feeling they kind of maybe play like that again. Kind of play that kind of sitting in game a little bit, and I think they did, because they've had success doing it, but it just didn't work. And it didn't look like they had a plan B at all. They didn't look like they knew how to change gears and just find a spot. And that's one criticism I do have of Arsenal. They kind of feel like they're not very good problem solvers as the game's going on. They kind of have a pre-match plan. If it doesn't work, they don't seem to find a way around it. Maybe I'm being too critical. I don't watch them all the time, but just when I've seen them, that's one thing that really stands out to me. But yeah, I'll find out if that's the truth, because at the end of the show, Guy will pop up, our producer, and he'll either agree with me or he'll give me down the bank. So probably the latter.
I didn't actually ask him what he thought of the performance before we started recording. Actually, that would have been a nice one.
Well, he's tactically, I think, not brought it up, hasn't he? So,
so before we move on to Real Madrid, in terms of what this game means for Liverpool in a top 4 chase, obviously it was a good weekend for Liverpool. Leicester drew. Did he draw or get beat? Who did Leicester face again?
I want to try and beat.
Yeah,
whoever.
They got beat by City. Obviously, the teams around Liverpool got genuinely dropped points. Everton did as well, apart from West Ham, really. And I think Spurs. But
West Ham, eh?
Yeah, I know. But other than that, Liverpool generally made ground up on most teams around them. So I've just said Spurs. Spurs didn't even win. Spurs do 2-0 with Newcastle.
Yeah, they conceded late on, I think, didn't he?
Yeah. But in terms of what this means for Liverpool's top 4 chase, how are you feeling? I must admit, I was feeling better after the Arsenal game as opposed to now. But I do think there's a chance, isn't it? It's up in the air at the minute.
I fancy Liverpool to sneak in there. You know, I'm looking at the table now. So who's ahead? You've got 4 points. No, it's only 3 points off West Ham. You know that can change within a weekend, really. So there's West Ham, Chelsea, Tottenham, Liverpool, then Everton behind Liverpool. Although Everton have got a game in hand, I suppose. They're 2 points behind with a game in hand, so it's still really, really tight. I just think the way I do fancy Liverpool just to sneak in. The two for me are either Liverpool or Chelsea. I really like West Ham. I think they're doing some good stuff, but I just expect them to just tail off at the very end. So it's between Liverpool or Chelsea for me.
Yeah, in terms of 538, which is they provide the general probability attached to the Premier League and stuff.
Predictive model.
Yeah. It's very much up in the air at the minute in terms of third downwards, really. So City are virtually guaranteed to finish where they are. Manchester United, according to the model, are 97% likely to finish in the Champions League places. Then you've got Leicester with a 65% chance. Then Liverpool with a 53% chance. Chelsea, surprisingly, only with a 38% chance. But obviously, I assume that the model's factoring in the season performances, which includes what Frank Lampard delivered. Obviously, Chelsea have been on a little bit of a different level since Tuchel arrived.
Yeah.
West Ham, I've got a 28% chance. Spurs, 16% chance. And Everton, a 2% chance. And outside that, it doesn't really consider anybody. So it's kind of a 6-team race, probably a 5. I mean, 2% for Everton's not the highest, is it? So it's probably a 5-team race with the model currently ranking Liverpool above Chelsea. And the reason behind that is because Liverpool's general numbers, despite the obvious errors and stuff like that, Liverpool's general numbers are okay, really. They see a lot of the ball, generally outshoot their opponents, generally post better expected goals than their opponents and things. So that means you're more likely to win most games, but it feels like Liverpool have more errors in them than Chelsea, and it feels like Liverpool are just more vulnerable than Chelsea, really. Although Chelsea had a bit of a collapse, it was a red card and stuff, wasn't it? So
yeah, I think at the minute something like that happens, a red card, it's hard to take the game. I mean, it was still a pretty heavy collapse, wasn't it? All things considered, to lose 5-2 to West Brom, but it does change the whole landscape of fixtures like that. I'll be honest, the model there is very representative of if I had to put percentages on all the remaining teams in terms of finishing in the top 4. I think I do fancy Liverpool just because I think you've had some. They've had some decent recent domestic form in terms of picking up victories. As we always touch on the underlying numbers, the underlying numbers paint Liverpool still as a good side. We know there's flaws in them, which is why they're where they are. But I just see the biggest threat is Chelsea, because I do think Chelsea are a different animal under Tuchel, despite that defeat. I'm pretty sure that's his only defeat so far as Chelsea manager, isn't it? And it come under bizarre circumstances. So I think when you think of him being a great manager, well, I think he is anyway, at least a very good manager, and the players they've got available compared to Liverpool. Like, Liverpool might have the better fully fit first 11, but in terms of the squad, Chelsea's is better. I think that could play a part.
Yeah. I mean, do you think there's any likelihood that Leicester drop out? Because obviously they're getting looked at as in a very good position at the minute, and that's obviously true at the minute. I'm not sure how many points clear of Liverpool.
So they're currently 7 of Liverpool and 5 of 5th placed Chelsea. So look, it's not within the. It's not impossible, is it, that they could drop out? But
I had a little look at the fixtures recently for a few pieces, just the general fixture running difficulty of most teams and stuff. And Leicester's end to the season is quite hard. I mean, they've got to face a lot of teams around them. So the last game of the season, they faced Spurs. Second to last game of the season, they faced Chelsea. Third to last game of the season, they faced Man United. And even the fourth to last game, it's against Newcastle United. But if you consider what Newcastle are fighting for and the players they've just got back, Leicester's end to the season, it's not easy. And if Barnes remains out, if Maddison keeps picking up these odd little knocks that he seems to be getting, I do think it's possible that Leicester have some form of wobble. And if Liverpool can at least put the pressure on them by just showcasing a degree of consistency, I feel like it's more likely then for a team like Leicester to shake even more than normal, given that, a Premier League champion essentially is coming up behind them, whereas they haven't really achieved fourth, this group of players. They had it in the bag last season and kind of fell off for various reasons. It could get into the heads that it's maybe going to happen again and stuff. So it does feel to me as though, despite West Ham's form, it does feel to me as though it's out of Liverpool, Chelsea and Leicester. And although I feel like Liverpool can do it, I'd be really surprised if Chelsea don't. The only thing with the Chelsea thing, though, is the way they've played since Tuchel came in, super concentrated, not given an inch on a defensive side. The way they kind of collapsed, Liverpool have collapsed a few times a little bit like that, whereby you concentrated for such a long period, and then when you finally open the door, it kind of blows open for a few weeks and you can see loads and stuff, and you kind of, out of nowhere, begin to spiral a little bit. Do you think there's anything in that? Do you think that's kind of a thing?
It can be, yeah, but I think I think because of what they've been doing before this game, like they've looked really good, they've been really strong, and I think the circumstances of what happens, like losing a key central defender through a red card, I think there's enough variables there to kind of write it off as just a bad day at the office, as opposed to it being like, don't want to bring it up, but say that 7-2 result early in the year for Liverpool, that just kind of felt like, well, what's gone on here? Is the deeper issues where I think the red card in this one and things is just. Put it this way, I'll phrase it another way. I think it gives Chelsea a good enough excuse to just put it to one side and write it off as just a bizarre day at the office. And if they come back and win, say if they win tonight, obviously we're recording on Wednesday. If they win tonight, I think that'll be forgotten about already.
No, I agree. It's just, I think it was just worth shouting towards the top four, because that's kind of all Liverpool are playing for at the minute, especially given the Champions League result. But we might as well get to the Champions League anyway. Obviously, Real Madrid, the kind of going into the game, we had a fair bit of confidence. I don't think that was misled, really. I think there was logic behind that. But when Liverpool played, really bad, Dave. I mean, it's one of the worst performances I've seen this season, comfortably. With and without the ball, just so far from what you'd expect from a Klopp team for me.
Yeah, totally agree. Especially that first half was probably the worst half I've seen Liverpool play all season. I know Villa's up there, that game I just mentioned, but I think for me, like, people don't. I don't think if you watch Liverpool every week, you'll get it, but maybe if you don't, you won't. Obviously, Liverpool have dropped points. They've been beaten games. They've had bad results, but it's been a recurring issue in all those games where Liverpool have kind of still been the same in the first, say, 2/3 of the pitch, and then they just haven't been able to create in the attacking third, and then at the other end there's been like one big defensive error that's cost them. But in this game, I thought Liverpool were second best in pretty much every department. I thought Real Madrid looked really good. Liverpool, they seemed to be lacking intensity. They were really loose on the ball, just passes going out for like really basic stuff at that level. Like, a 20-yard pass going out for a throw, just couldn't seem to maintain the ball, couldn't really put Madrid under any pressure. Okay, Madrid really impressed me. I'm sure, I don't know if they did with you, Josh. I thought they were really, really good. But yeah, Liverpool were just miles off it.
Yeah, I mean, we will get to Madrid's approach because I think it was spot on. But in terms of what Liverpool did, yeah, from an analytical perspective, we don't really need to go too deep on this one because it does feel like a lot of what Liverpool did wrong was just basics. Like, there was a point where, you've got Wijnaldum there with the captain's armband on. He's just spent the whole weekend on the bench getting a rest from international duty and stuff. And there was a moment where, in and around the halfway line, he just played a 5-yard pass, I think, to Tony Cruz. And, they can then break and stuff. And he's usually one of Liverpool's most reliable players, one of the players Klopp can trust. One of the players who tends to keep the ball and doesn't really take many risks on it. So, it felt like it was contagious almost. It felt like, just passes going astray. Obviously, Madrid impose a bit of a man-marking system, a little bit like Atalanta and Leeds United, albeit to a slightly lesser extent. And I think Liverpool played as though it had really been drummed into them before the game that Madrid are going to be stepping on your heels every time you get the ball, and they're going to be coming right through you. And Liverpool played in a way in possession that almost suggested they were a little bit scared and a little bit mindful of getting clattered from behind. And obviously that might have been the case to an extent, given the man-marking scheme. But Madrid aren't that intense. And Liverpool coped really, really well with the man-marking of Atalanta, the man-marking of Leeds. But against Madrid, they really played within themselves, I thought. And, I appeared on a podcast earlier in the week, Managing Madrid podcast. I tweeted it out and stuff, really long preview. It was about 2 hours. And the lad who I appeared on with, I used to write with on a tactics site. And he sent me a DM during the game. We were messaging during the game and stuff. And he said, I can't help feeling as though Liverpool are giving Madrid far too much respect with and without the ball. It just wasn't good enough across a number of departments. But the way Liverpool approached the game, looking like they were kind of fearful, it was just really out of character.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it says about the respect with and without the ball. I did have a look this morning because for me, they just felt so passive to start with. I noticed PPDA, which is a metric that you can kind of capture pressure high up the pitch. Liverpool was averaging out at 21 for the first 30 minutes. And, for context, in the first 30 minutes against Arsenal, it was 5.92. Obviously, the lower equals the more aggressive. So 21 is really high, quite passive. And yeah, that kind of sums up just how sloppy it was on both sides of the ball, with and without it. And I just can't quite get it. I don't quite know why it was like that. Teams just I don't know if we were going to get on it, and maybe I've brought it too soon. But what did you think of the team selection? Because I initially could see sense in it. I thought it was, it made sense on paper to me. In terms of bringing that Keita, which meant to be this kind of press resistant beast who can get away from pressure, and especially with the man marking, you dribble past your man and bring others out, create spaces and things. But obviously that didn't work, did it, at all? And I wonder if that was a big factor.
No, I agree. When I first seen the team, I had no real issue. I liked that Jota was playing ahead of Firmino. I think we needed that penetration, we needed that speed and the goals and things. Klopp directly referenced the need for dribblers because we were facing a man marking approach, really. So, if you can win your individual duel, which is more likely to happen if you can dribble on the ball and stuff, you're likely to come out on top. So I thought Liverpool selected a really press-resistant midfield in Wijnaldum and Keita. They're difficult players to get the ball off, and they can, keep the ball and stuff like that, whether they're under pressure, whether it's passing, whether it's dribbling. And again, speaking to the Madrid tactics analyst, if you like, he messaged me again before the fixture and said, I don't know how many Madrid followers that you have, but everyone's kind of going a bit berserk as to how Klopp seems to have picked the pressing team. And, Madrid, although they can certainly build, and although they've got their own press-resistant players, particularly in midfield, they do have the flaws. So, looking at the team, I had no major problems with it. I thought, Wijnaldum's had a week off. Keita has had all kinds of time off, but while constantly training behind the scenes and building himself up. And when the team just started playing, just giving the ball away, the flanks looked wide open. And obviously, we have to touch on it. Naby Keita came off on the 41st minute, which is, again, really uncharacteristic of Liverpool and Klopp in particular. I think since he took charge at Anfield, I can probably count the number of times he's made a first half sub tactical on one hand. So to not even be able to wait 4 minutes for half time to go, it's quite a statement, isn't it? And it doesn't bode well.
Yeah, I was just about to say, I think you've just said that the key term. I was going to say that it felt like a statement substitution for me. Whether that was a pure not attack, but maybe it was some making a point of Keita, or maybe an admission that he'd got it wrong, or a message to the team saying that you haven't implemented the plans that we had in place. I don't know, but I think you could have easily waited a few minutes unless you wanted to prove a point, and I think that's what Klopp was trying to do. I must admit, I can see why he's done it, because it was really bad. The first half was really, really poor. I don't want to pull any punches on it. It was bad. So I can see why he's done it, but I was very surprised that he opted to do it there and then, which makes you think there was something behind it. And I don't know, for me, and I know we spoke about him recently, and I think you in particular were quite, what's the term I'm looking for, level-headed with the Keita stuff, in terms of being like, he's still got a long time to go in his career. But I do wonder whether he's going to recover from that now, because it feels like Klopp might not have the trust in him, because he was so vocal, wasn't he, in that he considered him to be really important for that fixture beforehand, and to bring him off after 41 minutes. I think you lose the trust of your manager now, and I'm not really sure when his next opportunity will arrive to kind of, be that guy again.
Well, that's the word that came to mind for me, to be honest. The whole trust thing, like, years ago, Klopp was persistently selecting the likes of Milner, Henderson, Wijnaldum in midfield, and it got a term levelled at it and everything. It was called the Brexit midfield at the time and stuff, and people had issues with it because of maybe the lack of technical prowess in that group of players. But it's just, a lot of it stems from the fact that Klopp can trust those players to execute whatever the game plan is to a high level. And whatever Keita was supposed to do, he clearly didn't. Whatever he was instructed to do, he clearly weren't doing it, because, Klopp would not remove a player after the 41 minutes because he's playing. Well, I suppose he would, but I think he's done it with Lovren because he was simply just playing badly. But I think a lot of it was just that Keita weren't really doing what he was supposed to be doing. He seemed really high in certain moments. I recall a little bit of a moment where there was kind of a gesture from Klopp towards Keita, where Klopp was kind of looking a bit animated and stuff. And I'll have to watch it back because I'm not certain on this, but it looked like Keita gestured back towards him in a way that, like a confused gesture, like where you put your hands up and you're like, I don't know. It was a bit like, I don't know where I'm supposed to be, or something like that. It's pure speculation, this one, but to remove a player after 41 minutes, it just kind of captures, whatever Klopp has told him to do, whatever he's expected from him. Keita's obviously offered quite a lot away from that, to the extent that he's needed to be substituted on. For them to pick him in the first place was a big show of faith. And I feel like now, moving forward in any big game, really, it probably will pop up in Klopp's head as to, what happened at Madrid. Can I trust this player to execute what I'm telling him to do here?
Just
So
the reason why I think it's so big as well, Josh, just to carry on your point, is because he's a big man manager as well, isn't he, Klopp? Like that's one of his best assets, and pulling someone off after 41 minutes is gonna damage their own kind of ego. It's probably going to make him a little bit resentful as a player, because anybody would be, no matter how you've performed, because we've played, not at this level, of course, but at a level, if you got pulled off after 41 minutes, you'd be hating your manager. You'd be so annoyed at him, even if you haven't played well, because you'd be really embarrassed, because it's embarrassing. And for him who I think Klopp is a really good. This sounds in a negative, but I mean as a positive. I think Klopp is a really good manipulator of people. He knows how to, work people, make them feel 10 feet tall and things. And I think for Klopp to know the impact that would have and still up to do it says to me that he's not too. He's kind of give up on Keita a little bit, and he's not really bothered about the impact it could have pulling him off, because there's a wider issue. And if he's to then go and dislike him, sulk, not be part of the team anymore, have the same team spirit, then so be it, because this is obviously a bigger thing that needed to be done.
yeah, I mean, Keita's talked about, weirdly, really, in the Liverpool fan base, because a lot of people, a lot of supporters don't really understand the hype around him and stuff. And although he offers a lot on the data side, which captures actions, on ball actions, events and things like that, interceptions, passes into the box, whatever you want to call it. The bottom line is football is played by humans, really, and those human aspects come into the game quite a lot. Hence why Henderson's valued so much by Klopp. Hence why in certain moments, fairly recently actually, I recall Liverpool needing a goal maybe, or Liverpool needing something, and Klopp brought Milner on as opposed to Keita. And I think after the game, Klopp actually said maybe in footballing terms, it would have made more sense to bring on Keita. And people started quote tweeting it and was like, what does that even mean? What's that? But obviously, from the leadership aspect that Milner brings and stuff, same with Henderson. I don't know Keita, obviously, but he strikes me as more of a introverted type player, maybe. He doesn't strike me as intense, doesn't strike me as intense in a certain way. Obviously, he's obviously very good off the ball at times and things, but I'm thinking particularly, vocally and things. It's that kind of department maybe where he falls a little bit short. And I think the people who value that side of the game are probably the people who don't think he's that great and don't really see the numbers. But from a Liverpool perspective, from Klopp's perspective, although the numbers are really important and you want them on your side and things, you also need a player to, those intangible elements like trust, leadership and determination and things. And it did look like the game kind of passed him by, despite the fact he'd been given a real opportunity.
Yeah, I agree totally. He's an event data king, isn't he, really? But in terms of actual translations into big performances, they're just few and far between. And then when you throw in the fact that he's got so many issues in terms of actually staying on the pitch, they're two big negatives really going against him. So yeah, I'll be interested to see where that goes with him. What did you think of the wing back stuff? What do you think of Trent?
In terms of how he performed on the day?
Yeah, I suppose that's obvious, isn't it? But just, obviously we kind of give him some credit, didn't we? A little bit early in the show, because he played really well against Arsenal. But he's back under the spotlight a little bit, isn't he? Because of the display in this game.
Well, I think first off, Zidane got it spot on for me. Very impressed with Madrid's general strategy for the game. They seemed to go longer than usual, and that was a deliberate ploy, I thought, to shine a light on Liverpool's struggling defensive line at times. They seem to really switch the play frequently. Mm-hmm. They are a team that do that anyway. I think that the second maybe in Europe's top 5 leagues, or certainly top 5 in Europe's top 5 leagues for switches of play per match. So I was expecting that, but they did it a lot. And obviously, given Liverpool's zonal approach to pressing, that can cause Liverpool issues. It caused Liverpool issues earlier in the season against Aston Villa. And once they switched to play, they had overloads quite frequently. So if it got switched in the direction of Trent's flank, Trent would immediately have to cope with probably Vinicius on the ball. But in addition to that, Mendy would be fairly close, willing to underlap or overlap, and Trent would have to momentarily cope with a double up. You could argue Henderson in Keita's position would have given him a bit more support, but at the same time, it is a systemic thing attached to Liverpool's game that everyone shuffles over to one side, and the switch of play can cause Liverpool issues if there isn't enough pressure on the ball. So I think just generally, Madrid just played more vertically than usual, switched to play a lot, overloaded the flanks, and obviously tested Liverpool in behind. A lot like, I thought it was very similar to how Chelsea played a few weeks back, and Chelsea played us off the park at the same time. Why have you got general thoughts on Robertson and Trent then?
Not too dissimilar to that, to be honest. What you've basically said there captures a lot of what I was thinking. I thought Madrid did really well. Thought what really stood out for me with Madrid doing it was they just have phenomenal, technical players, don't they? So these kind of in tight areas, they have the ability to switch the ball with very little backlift and very quickly, and control it very quickly as well. I think that's what really stands out when you think of, obviously they had Cruz, the usual Modric, Casemiro. These players are just so easily able to move the ball out so quick, and then the attackers, Vinicius, they just seem to take it down so quick and be able to, get on the move and drive with the ball, dribble with the ball really quickly. And I think that's why it really punished these switches of play and getting the ball forward, punished Liverpool so much, because technically they were just fantastic. It was just, everything was pinpoint, everything was swift, fast, and I think when you're playing the game at that speed and moving the ball that quickly, it's really hard to defend against.
Since the match, a lot of criticism has surfaced regarding Liverpool's high line. Obviously, the first goal in particular shined a light on it as an obvious flaw. Toni Kroos with a simple ball over the top in the direction of Vinicius Jr., who then scored. I've just wrote a piece on it actually this morning, and it's just gone live. So if you want to read that, that's on my Twitter at Distance Covered. But I think what I'm trying to capture in the piece is that obviously the high line looked bad on the night, but that's the same high line that absolutely dominated Arsenal 3 days earlier. And I think Klopp said after the game, his exact words were, that the high line isn't the issue. It's what happens in front of the high line in terms of the pressure on the ball and the usage of the ball. If you give the ball away in silly areas and combine that with not enough pressure on the ball, and you keep the high line, it's going to get exploded every time. It's going to get exploded every time. So
the Marco Silva effect.
Exactly, yeah, the Villas-Boas. But people have suggested that Klopp's defensive line should go a little bit deeper. I understand those shouts, but I'm just trying to specifically capture why Klopp isn't doing that as much. And although he's got weaker centre backs, all his midfielders, his 2 full-backs, and all of his forwards, they're all fit. So and they're all available and things. So if they all defend and press how they're supposed to, the high line should not suffer anywhere near as much as it did against Madrid. But for whatever reason, the pressing was miles off. I'm not sure what Liverpool's intentions was off the ball. It looked like they were reluctant to press Madrid high. It looked like they wanted to form maybe a little bit more of a middle block sort of thing, but still with the same level of pressing. But in terms of pressing like the likes of Courtois, it looked like Liverpool were a little bit reluctant to do that. But that kind of linked towards just a general approach to just not press the ball at all.
Yeah.
Hence Cruz's pass over the top, which was a great ball, but he probably doesn't make that pass anywhere near to the same degree of quality if he's got Mane in his face, as he's making the pass. So it really was
keeping his head down.
Yeah, it really was a strange defensive approach, I thought, Dave.
Yeah, so did I. As I said, I touched on it about 10 minutes ago. The PPDA was way down. It was just, I think maybe Liverpool didn't expect Madrid's midfielders, the key ones like Cruz, to come into those deeper positions, or there was a delay in maybe who were the attackers were to drop in with him, and kind of screen that area. I don't know, but that indecision potentially in those opening 45 minutes in terms of who's picking up these players who can play those penetrative balls, ultimately proved so costly. So yeah, maybe that was it. I mean, I can't see it being that, because your top ball playing. Maybe I'd have to watch the game again, see how the dynamics of the game played out. But when you've got ball playing midfielders like that, it's really normal for them to drop into the defence, get on the ball and start dictating play. But as I said, just watching the game, it felt to me like they were doing that, and maybe Liverpool weren't organised in terms of who was meant to be closing that down or who was meant to be screening that area, following that player. I don't know, but it did end up punishing big time because of the quality that they've got.
Yeah, it'd feel different. It'd feel different if the likes of Cruz and Modric offered an absolute clinic on how to avoid pressure. But it felt like they didn't. It felt like they just got a free rein. It felt like Liverpool just let them play. And the reason I wrote the piece and the reason I'm bringing it up now is because I think, in future games, obviously the high line always gets blamed. It gets blamed by pundits on the TV and stuff. Peter Crouch flagged it. But I think I want to bring the conversation more towards when Liverpool suffer from what seems to be a high line issue, rather than thinking drop deeper, Liverpool needs to drop deeper. I want us to start thinking, okay, what's the pressure on the ball, and where was the ball given away, and things like that, because then a light is going to be shined on the high line. If those come first, it's not to the same level, but it's kind of like blaming Alisson for conceding from a cross when Trent could have stopped the cross, or Robertson could have stopped the cross. You want to look at the source of the issue for me, and I don't think the source is the high line. I think the source is usually the pressing or where the ball's being lost. Liverpool just have to be better at that. Certainly a lot better for the second half, second leg. Do you think Liverpool will stand any chance, Dave?
Yeah, I do actually. Not based on that 90 minutes, obviously, but it's going to be another game. It'll be a fresh 90 minutes. Liverpool at home. Okay, no crowd, but I still think you've got your home comforts, haven't you? And theoretically, you're talking about Liverpool beating Real Madrid 2-0 at Anfield. That is not without the realms of possibility. It could be done. And I expect the wrongs to be corrected from that game next week. But that being said, I don't think it's a given either. I think Real Madrid highlighted themselves as a team who've still got a lot of quality. A very astute team. You can tell have played these games year in, year out. I know Liverpool have been performing at the highest level now for 2-3 years, but you can tell Real Madrid have just been doing this again and again and again for years. And it feels like even though they're missing a few key players, they've still got that kind of experience throughout the side. So it's not quite that Barcelona game, is it, of a couple of years ago, but a comeback's needed. And I think it's doable. In short, I think it's doable, but I'm just not sure whether it will happen. It's really on it. I feel like I'm sitting on the fence, but I just can't call it, Josh. Really can't call it.
At the minute, I don't have that much hope, but it could be as a product of watching the game last night. If Liverpool play really well on the weekend, I'll probably turn again. But just considering there's no fans in the ground, and especially Liverpool's problems in defence every now and then, I think I can't see Liverpool keeping a clean sheet. I think that's the issue. I can see Madrid scoring one. I was impressed with Zidane's approach and things, so I would be surprised if Liverpool don't concede one. And if Liverpool do concede one, they have to score three, which is a bit unlikely the way things are going at the minute. Again, according to 538, according to that model, Liverpool have a 20% chance of progressing. Not that bad, but still not great. Madrid, obviously, an 80% chance. So
I thought actually no, I think that's fair. I don't know what I was going to say then, but no, okay, yeah, that's probably reasonable.
My only hope really is that we now have a full game to analyse. Klopp can very clearly show his players what went wrong, what to fix, and if he fields the team that executes exactly what he wants, Liverpool can do really well. You know, Liverpool beat Leipzig 2-0 twice in both legs, I think, didn't he, Dave? Yeah. So you could argue Leipzig are better on the defensive side than Real Madrid. Real Madrid will probably still be without Ramos. I think they'll still be without Varane, I'm right in saying.
Yeah,
so it is possible. Liverpool just have to be a lot better than what they were. That you can't expect to perform like that and get in from a game. You deserve to go to the competition when you're playing like that.
I did notice a few times that a few gaps did open as well. You know, like Jota making a good run through the middle, beating that kind of man-marking system, and centre-backs being caught. It just felt like Liverpool players in possession were missing those runs. So maybe when the videos watch back, it'll be pinpointed that, you know, here's your window of opportunity, play the ball here and be a little bit braver, then maybe that'll prove decisive.
Yeah, hopefully Liverpool find a way around it. But in the meantime, we haven't got long to preview this, but in the meantime, Liverpool face Aston Villa. Probably a nice-ish fixture to have in between the European tie. But at the same time, obviously they caused Liverpool huge problems early in the season. Remains to be seen whether Jack Grealish will play. But general thoughts on Villa at the moment, they've certainly fell off a little bit since the last time we spoke, I think. Having said that, they've just won, I think 3-1 against Fulham on the weekend.
Yeah, but I don't think it was the best performance really for the first 75 minutes or whatever. Just obviously come back strong, didn't he? 3 goals late on, but yeah, it's weird. You know, Villa have been quite fun this year. I've quite liked them. In fact, I like them a lot. You know, there's a lot to like. Grealish and a few other really good attackers. Underlying numbers being quite good. Last time I checked, anyway, I haven't looked in a while, I'll be honest, but I think without Grealish, they're just a completely different side. You know, he is their attack, isn't he? Really, you know, he's the target of a lot of their possession. Certainly going forward, he creates almost everything. And without them, you see what he struggles. You know, I'm not looking underlying numbers here, just purely goals. But I think since he's been out, it was failed to score against Sheffield United, failed to score against Wolves, just 1 goal against Newcastle, no goals against Tottenham. Obviously, they got the 3 against Fulham, but to kind of blank against Sheffield United, Wolves, and just score 1 against Newcastle isn't really a good reflection of the attack. I think they definitely missed Grealish. So I think it's as strong as 2 different sides with or without Grealish. Without Grealish, I think Liverpool win fairly comfortably. With him, it becomes a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, I probably agree, but I did write fairly recently about Grealish, and although they've certainly fell off a little bit without him, there was kind of something emerging a little bit when he was in the team. They fell off since. I mean, looking at their numbers here now, the expected goals for and against in each game they've played, it's been quite a while since they had a game that they deserved to win, by the looks of it. So against Fulham recently, obviously they ended up winning 3-1, so they finished the chances and stuff. But the expected goals in that game, 1.6 to Villa, 1.6 to Fulham. So that's kind of, you know, flip of a coin, if you like. That's what we like to call it. In terms of Spurs the week before, They posted an expected goals of 0.5 and Spurs posted 2.2. Week earlier against Newcastle United, they posted 0.7. Newcastle United posted 1.1. And that's been consistently about the case, for or against slightly. But they haven't really put that kind of flip of a coin to bed since they faced Burnley on match week 20. That was roughly at the end of January. The 27th of January, they faced Burnley. They actually lost 3-2. But the expected goals suggest that they dominated that game. They dominated the performance. 2.1 expected goals. Burnley posted 0.5. That kind of looks at a glance. That looks like the last game he actually deserved to fully win, really. So they're certainly not performing to the same level. Obviously, they struggle to basically get into valuable areas without Grealish compared to when he's on the pitch. He's probably the best in Europe, Dave, when it comes to carrying the ball into the penalty box. Last time I checked, I think he was above Kylian Mbappe in top spot.
Yeah, he's really good at penetrating into the area with carries and a really good dribbler even from deep, and wins a ton of fouls. Whether you think he goes down it easy or not, doesn't matter. I think he's really good at sucking defenders in and then getting fouls, which can be quite important in terms of getting your team up the pitch, creating good set piece opportunities. But obviously, what he's got to go with as well, he's got really good kind of final ball delivery as well. So he does. I think there is players in the Premier League who are really good at carrying the ball, but they lack that final ball. But Grealish has got that as well. He's clearly one of the best players in the league, and that's why I think he's just so important to Villa. It'd be interesting to see if he does end up going anywhere in the summer, because I think he could play at the very highest level. I know there's always talk about the difficulty in terms of getting him into teams. If there's any sort of concessions that need to be made to the makeup of the side, but just parking all that to one side for the moment. I think in terms of player, he's fantastic. A great player who can do a lot for your attack.
Yeah, I think he's stepped up this season. He's reached a bit of a different level this season. It'll be interesting to see, because I think they will try at least to execute pretty much exactly the same game that delivered 7 goals against us, and I don't think it's that different to what Real Madrid did, to be honest. It'll be interesting to see if they can execute it to that same level without Grealish on the pitch. Obviously, we don't really know yet. I think Dean Smith's become a bit of a meme, to be honest, the past couple of weeks, because he's permanently saying he's close, he's round the corner.
Yeah, he's very coy, isn't he?
Yeah, it's. I haven't liked it, to be honest. Just as a side note, I think it sends a bad message to the rest of your squad if you're unwilling to say, yeah, Jack can't play, but we'll cope fine. It's like he's been so reliant on Grealish that every week he's been saying, well, you might play, you might not. I just think it sends a bad message to your team. But in terms of the approach that Villa will take, I think they'll try and do exactly what they did before against Liverpool. It just doing that without Grealish will be difficult, and obviously will benefit Liverpool. I think he might be on the bench, or he might play a short period, but I don't think he'll play the full match, and that's obviously a good thing for Liverpool. He's going to be entitled to any game plan that they employ. So in terms of predictions, Dave, on this one,
it'd be great if Dean Smith tipped us off a little bit in terms of his playing. I don't know, to be honest. It's an awkward game, isn't it, to have in between a kind of season definer or season defining tie with Real Madrid.
It's difficult to know not only what Villa team's going to appear, but what Liverpool team's going to appear.
Yeah, good point. Because that yesterday was a span in the works, wasn't it? You could have kind of felt like there was method behind that team selection. It backfired. So there was Jota start on the bench and bring Firmino back in, and have Jota kind of bringing his impact in the second half. I don't know. You know what? I'm going to go for the 1-1.
Okay. I don't know where to start on this one. As I said, it's two teams that are changing with the wind a little bit at the minute. I think I'm going to go 2-0 Liverpool. But despite saying that, I don't think it's going to be a breeze by any means. But I don't think Grealish is going to play. And I think Liverpool will try to right the wrongs of what happened in Madrid by pressing the ball a lot, and given that Liverpool are now going for fourth with something to play for, it's kind of a must win. It's not really like that for Villa. Villa are kind of just where they are at the minute. I don't really think they can play for much. So yeah, I'm gonna hope for the 2-0. In terms of the Madrid game, I think we should probably avoid a preview, do you reckon? Prediction.
I think it's hard at this stage, isn't it, really?
Yeah, we're doing this very early, of course, and Liverpool have just suffered a 3-1 defeat last night, so I don't think any prediction. Go on.
What I will say is I feel like that Liverpool camp, like fans and stuff, yourself included, I think it'll be a little bit more confidence this time next week. I just think that the results are raw, isn't it? And let's be honest, it was unexpected. You know, let's be blunt about it. We kind of predicted Liverpool win. Varane obviously getting injured, getting COVID, kind of added to that. It's probably going to be a nice evening for Liverpool. So I think it's just a little bit raw, but yeah, maybe by tomorrow, everyone will be kind of rejuvenated and confident again.
Yeah, well, listen, hopefully by the time we next record, which will be next Thursday, I think, we'll have better stuff to talk about. Hopefully we'll have a Champions League semi-final to preview and all that sort of stuff. You never know. But thanks for joining us, Dave.
Thank you, mate. Cheers, everyone.
And we will be back next week to address the usual Liverpool stories. So thanks for tuning in and see you next week.